So I'll start again. Sorry about that. It seems like we're having some technical difficulties. So today's satsang is at the tail end of the second intensive that has been happening for the last 6 days. And that intensive was witnessing and abiding in I Am. And so I thought it's appropriate for today's evening satsang to be in line with that. And I'm hoping that it will be a bit of a meditation, guided meditation, following a little bit of an introduction. It'll probably be a shorter satsang than usual, given it's a guided meditation. And in a way that's appropriate, we can just end it in the silence of the meditation. It's also been a long week, and so it helps for it to be in this format. So I think I started off the intensive with a statement that was, I'm 99.9% sure that whatever life is, whatever the cause of this experience, or however this experience has come about, whether it is because there actually is an objective world out there with objective living entities, conscious living entities in it, or whether it is just an imagination in the mind of God, which are really essentially two quite different models or explanations of reality. And the truth is that someone will say it's one thing, the other will say it's another thing. And it isn't so important to know which one it is, because of the statement that I'm going to make, or did make, that I'm pretty sure that 99.9% sure that whatever the model is, and whatever life is, it is an arising within consciousness. What that means is it's an experience arising within a consciousness that is not separate from the experience, a consciousness that the experience is dependent on, a consciousness that without which the experience wouldn't exist. And when I talk about what life is, or the experience of life, I'm talking about exactly that, our experience of life that is there each morning when waking up out of deep sleep happens. And that experience is, or an experience of life, which is in content is always changing. Sometimes the sun is shining, sometimes it's not, sometimes the body is in pain, sometimes it's not, sometimes there are moods of excitement, other times there might be moods of flatness. And the experience is a multi-sensory experience, including emotions and thoughts. It's a very complex experience of sight, sound, taste, smell, touch, thoughts, feelings, emotions. And we've sort of come to take the experience based on what the experience is of. So the experience is an experience of something. And because it's an experience of something, what we have assumed is that the reality is what presents, meaning what the experience is of. So an example of what I mean by what the experience is of is the standard human experience is an experience of a world of form, a world of space and time, of objects that are outside of what seems like the primary object, or actually the primary object appears or feels like it is the subject. So that is what, by and large, life, or the life experience, the human experience, is an experience of. It is an experience of a world of time and space, a world of form, a world of objects that are outside of the primary object that is felt to be the subject. The subject that is aware of all of the objects outside of it. And that primary object, or that what feels like the subject, in the experience of life, the experience is of the subject being the body. And because that is the experience that presents in a consistent fashion, the the fact it is an experience has become completely overlooked. And instead it is assumed to be what it appears like, what it is, what the experience is of. And the experience is essentially always changing in the content, but the basic framework of the experience remains the same. So it is always an experience of time and space, of a world of form, except in times when the experience changes, and usually that is in, let's say, the dream state. The experience is less consistent in the dream state. There are shorter bits of content, and they contrast the waking state. And because of how they appear that they are happening when we are sleeping. It then seems like that is something outside of daily life, outside of the life experience, and so the experience as it presents makes it feel like the primary object, the subject, is asleep and is dreaming. That's what the experience is of. And so the fact that the experience is like that, where it all has an explanation to it, it allows the human being to continue to overlook the fact that it may actually all just be one singular experience arising in consciousness. And I don't mean this in some philosophical way where the consciousness is some consciousness separate from what we are, like God in which the whole universe arises, and I wonder where this God consciousness is, or if we talk about God consciousness, it is something that we might think we know as being in the thing in which everything arises, but it's God knows where it is. Who knows where it is? That's not the consciousness that I'm talking about. I'm talking about a consciousness that we can become aware of and be, and therefore know the experience to be an arising in consciousness, which really means a shift from taking what the experience is of and then missing the fact it is an experience. So a shift to appreciating all I ever know, all that life ever is a subjective experience arising in consciousness, which really means that the experience is made of consciousness, is not separate from consciousness, and is witnessed by that very consciousness. And that's all there is. All there is consciousness. And that means what we are, ultimately, the only thing that is real in this manifestation, in this experience, is the consciousness which is the fundamental, the primary, the base of this experience of life. And if that's all there is, we must be that. And we can come to know ourselves as that. And as in knowing ourselves as that, experientially, not intellectually, directly, then the present moment is seen to be, is felt to be, is known to be an appearance that is continually in flux, continually changing, much like the light projected onto a screen in a movie cinema. It becomes seen that what is happening is that light is projected onto a screen in such a way to create a certain appearance that creates an experience of something in particular. So the film is an experience of something in particular. And if there is an involvement in the film, seeing only what the content is, it can become the fact that the film is an experience that is continually changing to create a certain appearance can become overlooked. So the awakening to the fact that everything is an arising in consciousness is something that may start off as a set of concepts that we have no reference to. And eventually the hope is that those pointers that tell us life is maybe not exactly as it seems, that things are illusory and are purposely that way. Those pointers can maybe allow us to appreciate aspects of what is here now that have been overlooked. So what do we mean by consciousness? Consciousness to me is the nature of mind. So when we say mind, really what we mean is consciousness. And when we say consciousness, what we mean is mind. Now we've been used to hearing the word mind in relation to the human being, and usually when we think about mind, we think about thinking. So thinking is what arises in mind. And so the word mind and thinking have become synonymous with each other. So if we say there is a busy mind, what we usually imagine is a lot of thinking, and it feels like our thinking, because it is not an object outside, arises in mind. So the home of thinking, as we normally relate to it, the home of thinking is my mind. But actually the mind in which thoughts arise houses a lot more than just thoughts. It might become apparent that all experience, not only the thoughts, arise in this undefined place. No one really knows where mind is, and yet that's where everything arises. That's where all of the feedback, all of the experience, really what I'm pointing at, all of the daily life experience is an arising in mind. And so at the moment I'm talking about the human mind as we know it, in order for us to get a sense of what we mean by mind, because the human mind can be seen as a mirror down version of universal mind, if that is what exists. And whether it's universal mind or human mind, it doesn't really matter. What's important is for us to appreciate that the human daily life experience, which is an experience of something, an experience of a world of form, is always only ever arising in mind. And I'm trying to help for anyone who might have any confusion or lack of context of what mind or consciousness is, trying to create a picture based on something we can understand to make us maybe come a little closer to appreciating how everything can arise in mind. So and another step off this, which will elaborate the nature of mind, is that the human mind at night, it appears, dreams up a dream, a night dream. And so that night dream appears as an experience within mind. And the appearance, the experience within mind can be vast. It could be a mountain range, and the person could be on the top of a mountain range looking out over hundreds of kilometers of nature. And that dream can come into existence in an instant, and it all fits into mind. Mind is not limited by space or time. The nature of mind is eternal and infinite. The time and space framework is something that comes into existence as part of the creation, part of what is created in mind. And what I mean by creation, I mean imagination. Like a dream at night is an imagination in mind. A daydream during the day would be, if you close your eyes and imagined being on a beach. That is an imagination in mind. And the night imaginations have an immense amount of detail, and it creates a very particular experience that feels exceptionally real and has all sorts of layers in it, emotions and thoughts and speaking and people and landscape, time, space. Memories arise in dreams. And so it can help for us to look at a dream as a mirror down version to help us understand how what mind does is it creates. And so we can then change the word mind to consciousness, because when we're talking about mind, we're not talking about the brain. Let's leave the brain out of it. The brain might be the machine, but if there is a brain that is a machine, it will project the final product of that machine onto mind. Until it is projected onto mind, it doesn't appear, it isn't known, it isn't experienced. So for a while we might as well get rid of the brain and say whether it's the brain that produces the content or not, ultimately it needs to appear in mind to be aware. So let's assume that the mind, the consciousness in which it appears, because remember the mind is not a vast sized thing, and yet it allows for very varying landscapes to fit in it. At night, the dreams, we could have a dream of being in outer space, let's say, or a dream of being on a mountaintop with thousands of kilometers, or on an ocean with thousands of square kilometers of ocean in the dream. And so the mind is not something vast of space, but rather space can fit in it, and it will accommodate the experience. So that is means mind is consciousness. So let's assume that consciousness does its own creating. That the nature of consciousness is that it also turns into, it becomes. So we might like to look at mind in its active form and in its passive form. So mind at rest and mind in movement. So the mind at rest is the unmanifest. It means mind not doing anything, and so it is absolute nothing. Not just empty space waiting to be filled, but the fact that there is nothing filling it means there is no need for mind in its actualized state. So mind then is in its unmanifest, in its potential. So pure creative potentiality at some point ready to actualize, and as soon as it actualizes into motion, into a dream, into an imagination, that's when mind goes from mind at rest to mind in movement. And it's funny that the word mind is very similar to the word wind. The first letter is just turned upside down. And so if you think of wind in movement is something, and wind at rest becomes the absence of wind. So you can maybe, that analogy can apply to mind in movement becomes active and contains the imagination. And as the imagination comes to an end, it's like the universe shrinking back to where it started from, absolute nothing. And so the human mind is a mirror down version that can help us understand what might be the mind of God, which is really just referred to often as consciousness, or universal mind, or just God. And so it's not like God has a mind. It's not like God has a brain and a body. God is mind that is self-creating. It just turns into a manifestation. That's what it does. Its nature is to manifest or to imagine into existence. To imagine into existence a manifestation within itself. And that manifestation, just like the dream at night, is made of the mind in which it arises. It is not separate from the mind in which it arises. And the awareness of the dream is because of the awareness of the mind itself. So the nature of mind is creativity. It imagines into existence. The nature of mind is also awareness. And it turns out that the nature of mind is also isness. Isness means the nature, when it is in its actualized form, knows that it exists, feels like it exists. And that sense of existence is inserted into the manifestation that is arising in that moment, exactly as the dream dictates. The awareness might be aware from a third person point of view, looking in at the dream, or at the manifestation, at the creation, or the sense of existence is inserted within a particular object of the dream, of the manifestation. For example, a human character in the night dream, there might be a character that feels like I exist, because the I, the isness of mind, is inserted into that particular character. So that means the experience is going to be an experience from the perspective of that main character as being the subject. But actually that main character is just an object, meaning imagination in mind. And it is enlivened with the sense of existence only because the very nature of mind includes existence, and that existence is positioned somewhere in the manifestation. So that sense of existence can, in theory, shift around depending on the storyline of the dream. The sense of existence could shift from being located within an object within the dream, like the dream character that dissolves with the dream, and it could shift out of the dream character, as is characteristic of the accounts of out-of-body experiences, or many of the peak experiences experienced by seekers in the non-dual path. Peak experiences that happen as a result of the storyline, the creation of life in mind, according to the storyline, which includes seeking, that includes references to the truth or reality. And then, because it is a story of apparent cause and effect, everything that happens in the storyline appears to have happened because of a cause. That's why many peak experiences happen for seekers. And some of those peak experiences include a shifting of the awareness out of the body, such that it becomes apparent that what I am, all that I ever have been, is the awareness of Source. So the experience that arises in mind, is made of mind, is witnessed or awared by mind. And remember, the word mind and consciousness are interchangeable. So all of that is arising in consciousness, made of consciousness, witnessed by consciousness. That experience is not necessarily as it appears to be, but is created to appear to be a certain way, which means the life experience feels like hearing is happening because of the ears of the body. The experience is designed that should covering up of ears happen, then sound isn't heard. And so it appears like the hearing or the awareness of sound happens because and through the ears. It makes it seem like that is the part of the causal sequence, that we hear sounds outside that come to the ears, processed by the brain, and then heard. That's the appearance of this manifestation. But if it is, as being suggested, an appearance in mind, a creation in mind, then it isn't really the body doing the hearing. The sound is arising in mind. The body image is arising in mind. Any thoughts are arising in mind as part of the dream, and it's all being awared by the awareness of mind. So in the guided meditation that will start shortly, there are going to be some pointings that encourage us to let go of how we believe life to be. Encourage us to see certain beliefs as just thoughts that may not be true. There'll be an encouragement to see that maybe the illusion of life is intended for us to assume life is one way, to not challenge it, all of that part of the dream. And then at some point, for some hints to come in as part of the dream that get us to say, I don't know. Maybe it is radically different to how it appears. So if you feel like what we might call closing your eyes, that might happen. What we call closing eyes might happen. So the experience is an experience of a body closing their eyes. And so the vanishing of the world of form apparently is because the eyelids are now covering the eyes, which appear to be the instrument that allows the external world to be seen. Maybe life isn't really like that. Maybe the experience includes in it the feeling that the body's eyes are closing, and then the experience changes radically. So we assume that the world of form, we assume that what we know as our house or our garden or a cafe is still there, but we just have our eyes closed. Is that true? If you investigate the present moment experience right now with what we call eyes closed and let go of anything that we think we know, let go of anything from the past, and are just present with the experience as it exists right now, which I suggest is an experience arising in consciousness, just like all of life is. So if we are present with the actual experience that is here right now, we'll notice that the world of form has largely disappeared. You can bring attention, soft attention, to what you might still be referring to as the back of your eyelids or the bridge of your nose. The back of the eyelids, the back of the bridge of your nose. Just bring attention softly to there. And in a way, just like you might, the feeling of looking out at a tree might happen, you can still allow that feeling of looking out, which is really just bringing attention into the present moment, and you might realize there is this vast open space. That is what the experience is. And maybe we can drop the idea that that is the back of our eyelids. Is it? If we don't remember, if we don't rely on a memory, if we don't rely on a memory that says you are a person sitting on a chair in a room and the room exists outside you, just present with what actually is. Sound is arising. If the idea that that sound is coming from someone on the other side of a world, do you know that for sure? Life is said to be an illusion, a play of Leela, a play of consciousness. And when that is overlooked, it is said to be Maya or confusion. So, sound is arising. Is it arising outside? If we're really present, we notice the sound appears inside that which is aware. Sound comes out of nowhere and then subsides back into nowhere. If a sound of what we might call a dog barking were to happen. And we don't label it as a sound of a dog that must be in the neighbor's garden. If we realize, if I don't bring in memory what I think I know about life, do I know that there is a dog just because there is a sound that we might call a sound that can only come from a dog? Do we know that there is a garden outside of this present moment? Now this exploration requires a bit of courage, because we say, this is ridiculous. I've spent my whole life experiencing it a certain way. And if I were to open my eyes, the room would be there. But maybe that's the illusion of it all. Maybe the room is not here when the room is not here. And then, in an instant, the room appears. Does your car exist right now? If you let go of everything you know and are just present with what is now. Do other people in the world exist? If you're present with what's here right now, there isn't even a body. Maybe some indistinct sensations that might seem much more distinct than they actually are, when thought is arising and saying, oh, I can feel my leg. Bring attention to that sensation without labeling it. And it might become apparent that that sensation tells you much less about what it really is than we might think. If the assumption from the past falls away, there is a sensation, but where it comes from and what it's about is not contained in the sensation. Thoughts may arise, just like sounds arise. And as long as they're seen as an object that wasn't there a moment before, then the thought is fresh in the experience. It is an object arising, and it will be replaced, just like a cloud moving across the sky. And in this, what we might call the closed eye meditation experience, which really is just an experience of the world, the formless world, where we might realize that the world of form is simply an appearance on this background of formless awareness. The world of form appears to be so real, and yet it can vanish in an instant. And what we're left with is not the back of the eyelids, but a vast open space, which is the inward space, the internal world. This is turning inwards, and it's when we turn inwards that the nature of mind can reveal itself, because all of the objects that tend to cover up the essential nature of mind, a lot of them are removed. And a lot of the assumptions that we have about what is happening in this moment are hopefully being challenged by some of the pointers. Allowing awareness to just be here with the appreciation that this vast open space and awareness are inherently one and the same thing. That the awareness is not in your head. Does a head even exist? Awareness is the nature of mind. If there is still a very strong sensation of a head and a feeling that all of this thinking is happening inside a head, then maybe allow the center of consciousness to drift down into what might still feel like your chest. Drift down as if it's being dragged down gently by gravity. And relax. Allow the spaciousness to open up. Recognize that the voice, the sound that we call voice, is just arising in the awareness, not coming from anywhere, but arising and then subsiding into the awareness. There's no job to be done. The meditation doesn't have to look a certain way. In fact, meditation is simply allowing everything to be as it is, witnessing everything as a happening, witnessing everything arising within that which is aware. All there is consciousness. And that consciousness exists even when the body is not there. As far as your experience goes, there is no world of form except for maybe some indistinct sounds or some distinct sounds, but that brings in the world of form only when we label it as more than a sound arising in consciousness. What doesn't go away, what won't ever go away in the manifestation, is the awareness that is aware of everything that comes and goes, including the potential of awareness being aware of awareness, aware of the fact that there is awareness. And what also doesn't go away and is here right now is the undeniable sense of existence. The undeniable sense of isness or amness. More appropriately described as I am. The only reason that we might drop the I is because of the loadedness of the word I. If we appreciate that I am means something is, something exists, and it is known to be what I am. But what I am is not the person or the body. It is the very consciousness that exists. There is an undeniable sense of amness, of isness. If the question were to arise in this moment, are you dead? The answer from that sense of isness is obvious. No, I am. I exist. What exists is indistinct. It's not defined. Where that sense of existence comes from, we are not informed. We are the awareness and the sense of existence that is undeniable. This is turning inwards. This is knowing the formless essence of oneself. This is maybe an appreciation of the world of form, all of the thoughts, all of the emotions are simply objects, part of this amazing life experience. And at any point, once the gateway to the internal opens up, one can remember what I am. One can return home, dissolve into this formless empty space and just be. And in being, there is a knowing that there is already a completeness, that nothing needs to happen, that we don't need to become. We are. I am. Now, if thinking of the external world is happening and there is a sense of being very much the body, maybe you can just, awareness can recenter at what might be thought to be the back of the eyes. Awareness can become aware of that vast open space. The notion that that is the back of the eyes can fall away, and we can just be with what is. Awareness of the external world can start to fade away. Awareness of sounds that create the impression of the external world will fade away. As awareness turns deeper and deeper inward. In time, thoughts, if they are arising, will just seem like a distant object as awareness turns in deeper and deeper. And yet what remains ever present is the sense of existence, the sense of amness, and the functioning of awareness. Those are the two aspects of consciousness, that which you are at your core. Whenever you feel ready, what we call opening eyes, the experience of eyes opening, may happen. The world of form may present itself again. And if we don't hold on to the idea that that world of form was always there, it's appearing fresh on the same background of awareness that was there a moment ago, devoid of the world of form. The body is an object of form arising in this experience of form. And in any instant, what we call closing eyes might happen. And the experience changes radically. The world of form is gone. All objects that create the appearance of space fall away. And we're able to rest more deeply in the formless essence that we are. To know that. To be that. At no distance. And in an instant the world of form reappears. Much like frames in a cartoon. Each frame is fresh and separate, independent of the last. However, arising in such a way, one after another, to create a certain impression. It's coming to know life like this that allows a witnessing of life to happen. It's part of a change that happens in this experience of life. The experience of life is an experience of apparent cause and effect. So if that shift is to happen, life will usually put an apparent cause ahead of it. So whenever you feel like it, not as some strict practice, feel free to see if the internal world presents itself. The world of form vanishes in an instant. Sound objects may arise, and they may not be what they appear to be. They may not be coming from a world outside. They may all be arising as objects inside what you are. None of this is our doing. This is the predetermined story of life, the experience of life, which is always has been, always will be an experience arising in consciousness, made of consciousness, not separate from consciousness. We can't stick our hand into mind and extract the content. What we would extract, what would come out would be, mind would come out with the content, which is not possible. All of the content arises in mind, is not separate from mind, and is awared, is known by mind itself, by the awareness of mind, the awareness aspect of consciousness. That is all there is. That is what I am. That is what you are. All there is consciousness.